Hey everybody, how's it going? I've been having a great time with the Oblivion Remaster lately, but there's some things that we really need to address in regards to some of the changes that have been done to the game. Some of them are pretty substantial, and even though they're not ruining the remaster, they do raise a lot of concerns for the future of Bethesda's games. If you're interested in a dedicated video on Oblivion's remaster as a game, the things I've been having a blast with, etc., do not hesitate to let me know in the comments. I tend to make videos on whatever I feel like talking about, but I do tailor my priorities off of what people seem to be more interested in watching. Alright, now let's get on to the video. So, on my previous video when the remaster launched, I did express concern towards the body type change. There's a whole video on that if you're interested, but in short, I tried to urge some calm in the discourse, that people who don't care about the change just because they want to play the game should always remember that they can do both. Enjoy the 99% of the actual game's content, mostly faithfully recreated, and still raise their voices in criticizing this ridiculous practice of not even giving the players the option to select male and female alongside the body type selection, but straight up taking it away from them and forcing this soulless, genderless ideological body type concept into the selector as the only thing that players can pick. And similarly, I urged people who were outright boycotting the game because of this practice to be understanding of those who wanted to play the game anyway, because at the end of the day, what people were buying this remaster for was not because of the body type nonsense, it was because it's Oblivion. Like, I know how lame it sounds when someone says normalize this and that, because it's usually attached to some virtue signaling nonsense or something that is already normal, but people just want to play victim about it all the time. But literally, normalize being able to criticize these issues even in good games that people want to play regardless. Issues are still issues. Separating them and criticizing them, making your voices heard about them, is very important even if you enjoy the game that you're playing. If you don't want more of something, you need to criticize it. You need to be vocal about it. You can't just say that you don't care and move on, and you also can't just expect everyone to boycott everything, because that's just not what gamers do. If a good game comes out and people want to play it, they're gonna want to play it, and not every game with this type of activism injected into it is going to be as bad as Veilguard or as blatant as Veilguard, where people don't even want to play the game, so it's important to keep this in mind moving forward. I will refrain from covering this matter in this video any further since I already did it in the past one. Instead, we will be moving on to what other things have been changed or outright censored in this remaster, the reason why it's happening, and tackling some of the arguments or excuses in their favor. As I said in that first video, people were concerned that the body type selection itself was a sign of more things to come, more changes hiding under the surface, and they were totally right. This is why pattern recognition is still so viable. Here's an overview of some of the changes that have been spotted by players, specifically the ones that I'll be talking about in this video. Gendered stats have been removed from characters, some female armor variants have been replaced by just a male variant, there's also been some light reworking of female clothes, several statues dotting the land, including the Daedric shrines, have been altered in a very specific and obviously censorious way, and we'll be getting into all of this going forward into the video and talking about some extra examples. The thing about these changes though is that they haven't been consistent. It's why this video has been taking me a while to get done with. I've been going back and forth between the original game and the remaster to look up several statues across the land. I'm not on PC either, so I couldn't use mods to get around easier, and using the free cam mode was out of the question, so I had to literally jump around surrounding rocks and other bits and surfaces of landscape like a moron, trying to climb up on Daedric lords just to check for cleavage.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
But anyway, we'll get to it bit by bit, but basically some changes were made in a very specific way towards the erasure of gender differences and aesthetics, which is of course not surprising since that's precisely the same brand of activism that the body type selector represents. Others were made very specifically because of female objectification, which was the hardest one for me to accept because it's just mind-boggling to me that someone ever looked at Oblivion and thought, oh no, this game is just too gooner-fueled, we need to tone this down. Like seriously, I was running around Cyrodiil checking statues and thinking, okay, what's the angle with this one? Why did they change this? Trying to find a different way to apply it to gender erasure, but nope. Some cases truly are just, inescapably because of gooning, and also this inherent discrimination towards women and femininity. Then somehow we have other instances where changes were made in a positive way, and other instances where there weren't any changes at all. They could have changed it, but they didn't. So let's get in there and take a look at these examples. So let's start with the easiest. A statue that has been shared around online very often is one of the Arena Lady. In the original, it kinda just looks like a regular woman standing there. The pose is not very remarkable for an arena fighter, so I don't actually mind that they changed it to make it look like more of an actual arena fighter with a more striking pose and a weapon. However, it's pretty damn obvious that they toned down her chest. A thing I want you guys to take note of is the fact that this is not a recreated statue, it's a brand new one with a new pose. There's just something about this that I'm not sure if it's relevant or just a coincidence, but in most of the cases that we'll be seeing today, whenever there's a new female statue, very important keyword here, female statue, not male, with a new pose, and not just a copy of the original, the woman's features or proportions will be toned down or covered up. This happens most of the time. Again, this is why this has been so weird. For example, these statues right here of all the gods in the Arboretum, is that how you say this word? Sorry about the awful weather in the footage, by the way, making everything so damn brown. This is yet another thing I'm definitely going to be mentioning in a future video, covering the remaster in general. But anyway, these statues were copied pretty consistently from the original. They aren't necessarily spicy in the original, not like some of the Daedra shrines, probably because the divines were meant to be depicted in more respectful ways perhaps by their sculptors, but in some of them, like for example on the Bella statue here, it's obvious that they rightfully gave her a, pardon my French, pretty big rack. This is present in the remaster without having been toned down at all, and on Mara's statue, it's even more noticeable. In the original, her chest is very detailed, it protrudes outwards, and in the remaster, much to my surprise, they kept it exactly the same without changing it. But in nearly every other case that I've found, they did the opposite. The one occasion where they seemingly created a new female statue with a new pose and didn't censor her, in fact it kinda looks like they went out of their way to add even more detail to the statue's chest, was the mermaid in Anvil. This is kind of the thing that causes me so much confusion, because initially, after seeing the goddesses be depicted exactly the same as they were in the original without removing the obvious contouring around Mara's breasts, for example, I thought that what happened was that any time that these developers copied an original statue just as it was, they would just do their job properly and not censor the statue. But anytime that they created a new statue design to replace the original, with a new pose and etc., they would impose their changes and censorship. But this wasn't really consistent because here's this mermaid. She's a new statue with a new pose and she's not censored. And say hello to Namira. She is one of the few cases where a Daedric shrine is maintained as it is originally, just like the statues of the gods in the Arboretum, except in the original we can see clearly that she is wearing some robes with nothing underneath, whereas in the remaster it may be difficult to notice due to YouTube compression, but they added a t-shirt underneath to cover up the tiny bit of cleavage that was present there. So despite being a statue that is recreated from the original, they still went and censored it. And the same thing happens again with Azura, which I will show you in a bit. I found this one to be so incredibly ridiculous even contextually. Namira is one of those Daedric lores that just don't give a damn about anything. She is absolutely relentless, like there's some of them that do care about the way that they present themselves to mortals or have a measure of, let's say, mindfulness with how they are perceived. Some of them can even appear benevolent to mortals. But Namira is just not. She's the mistress of cannibals, she takes pleasure in the consumption of people, and she's associated with repulsing things. The last thing she would care about would be to put on a goddamn shirt underneath her misty robes just to make sure that no mortals would dare to look upon her already concealed chest. Then, coincidentally, except it is not coincidental at all, say hello to Nocturnal. This statue is actually copied one for one from the original. Nothing has been changed on this one, and it's pretty damn obvious why after going through all of the other examples. It's because there was nothing even remotely explicit or reinforcing femininity about it. It's really just a woman in robes with some pets. Now let's see what happened to Azura, another woman in robes, except in this case, in the original Azura had a similar situation going on with the mermaid, the Mara statue, and the arena girl, in that her breasts were very clearly contoured and detailed, though they weren't that big either. They weren't as big as Mara's, for example. In the remaster, they completely eliminated this by giving her these big robes that completely cover up her natural curves and shape. And adding to that, here's Boethia. This one I had to literally climb on top of to make sure, but in the original it's obvious that we have a female here. There may not be a lot of contouring, but it's clear that it's a woman. The tricky thing about some of the Daedra and even gods in Elder Scrolls lore is that some of them present themselves differently throughout the ages, sometimes as male, sometimes as female, and other times as amorphous things that don't even have a perceivable gender. It also depends on who is telling these stories and from culture to culture. For example, to the Khajiit, they are all cats. Some people like to take this totally standard fantasy writing stuff and just say that Elder Scrolls has always been woke, but those people are f***ing stupid, so let's move on. So while Boethia is a female in Skyrim, she could, be something else in a different game, but in Oblivion, she is straight up depicted as a female. I even took a closer look, I climbed up on her, hoping that I don't get struck down as a consequence, and you can see that she has breasts, for example, but in the remaster, it's straight up not noticeable at all. There's no chest on her whatsoever, it's a straight line all the way down. And lastly, the most egregious in my opinion, here is Meridia. The original developers all the way back in 2006 actually gave her the biggest set of GYATs in the Daedric pantheon, and Virtuous or Bethesda or Microsoft or whoever the hell it is that was in charge of these changes really went ahead and turned her into a nun. That's a damn shame to see this. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Misogyny is a word that I don't use lightly at all, because these are words parroted by sensitive snowflake type of people who have dulled the meaning and impact of words just like these by throwing them around at just about anything. But I do see this as a major motivator in some of these censorious changes, because the exact opposite was done in statues featuring male Daedra. Let's start with the weakest example. So you guys saw the original Meridia statue and her goddamn her revealing dress, her leg popping out of the dress, that kind of stuff. Now say hello to Sanguine. This dude, comparatively, has an even bigger problem with how he's posing and how little he's wearing. And yet, they didn't see a problem with leaving him to be depicted exactly as he was originally. His sphere is revelry, hedonism, and debauchery. He's kind of like a sick and twisted version of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine. Sanguine just wants to party. Much like other deities in this world, his design suits him. Yet, while they allow this statue to remain the same, they go out of their way to censor others in very specific ways that target certain body parts or features of accentuated femininity. Now here's Hermes. He is the lord of the hunt. Bro loves to wear as little as possible and just flaunt his superior hunter's prowess and physique. In the remaster, they kept him just as he was, shirtless and fit, without going out of their way to add stupid t-shirt or a pair of pantaloons to hide his muscles or his legs. Similarly, here's Malakath. He's wearing a loincloth. Yet there's no censorship, no ambiguous little details, no extra bit of fabric, like for example adding boxers or shorts to the Daedric Lord, the way that they added to goddamn Namira, despite this one being straight up topless and pantsless. Not even a sneaky tree in the way covering up anything, like nothing. Bro has his whole ass cheeks out on display. Now let's look at a case where they actually went out of their way to make the statue look even better. Say hello to Clavicus Vile, a bit of a Loki or Lucifer of the Elder Scrolls universe. In the original, he looks like a goofy Teletubby looking dude. I don't even know, like this just looks terrible. But in the remaster, they revamped him completely, made him look great, and it actually bothers me because I like it. Like, if you're going to do anything, this is how you exact changes in a remaster. If you see something that looks borderline goofy, especially when comparing it to the other statues, and finding that it's lacking something that the other ones have, like certain vibes or details that are far more respectable than this one, then you go ahead and you try to make it look the way that the others do. You try to keep it consistent. And this is it right here. His beast actually looks like a beast instead of a potato. He actually looks like what he's supposed to look like, as a little devilish wish granter and trickster, instead of just looking like a... I mean, do I even need to say anything? I mean, look at this guy.
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No, 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 no. Look at the top of his head. Look at his lips.
And this just goes to show that so long as the character depicted is a male of sorts, then these developers will go out of their way to even go as far as to make them look better and less potatoey. However, if it just so happens to be a female, then no female traits whatsoever can be retained. No beauty can be exacerbated, no prominent feminine features can be put on spotlight, because women exist to be censored or toned down. Masculinity can either be perfectly retained or even exacerbated, but femininity must be held back, hidden, or outright removed. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I abhor seeing this. It makes me sick, because I know precisely where this is coming from. It's blatant and inexcusable, and it sucks that anytime someone brings it up and wants to talk about it, criticize it, straight up boycott it, or download mods to revert it, they are demonized, shamed, dismissed, or whatever else morons online have constantly done whenever this issue is brought up. And that's when the mods actually can be allowed to be downloaded instead of being removed from modding platforms, as they were in this case with the body type mods, before Nexus caved in and did their actual function as a modding platform by allowing the damn mod to exist. It's not just an issue seen by guys like myself who play games, but it's very much an issue that is noticed, acknowledged, and even despised by female gamers as well. In the production of this video, I did the unthinkable and went out there onto the world and spoke to women about this. I know, it's crazy. And the feedback was pretty predictable. They felt as if this is eradicating what makes women look like women. And it's true, I mean, I usually say gender erasure, but the fact is that it's really mostly focused on just one gender. Both the words for male and female may have been removed and replaced from these modern games with the body type stuff, but when it comes to characters in game and their depictions, only female characters are being altered, while male characters are allowed to show their bodies and features. We can even see this in facial capture situations where, for example, with Star Wars Outlaws, K-Vess was made uglier than her actual actress, but in the case of Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, Cal Kestis, the character, is perfectly scanned after the actor Cameron Monaghan. And if I'm not mistaken, they even made the character model more muscular. And that's just an example among many. They also said that it's like they're pandering to these small groups of people who go hard on this binary versus non-binary stuff, putting them and their worldview on a pedestal under the guise of eradicating the objectification of women, even when there's obviously no objectification at all, like some of these statues in Oblivion. If some of these statues are too much, by these people's standards, then we'll never have anything. The only acceptable female design is one where there's nothing noticeable at all that makes it a woman. And the only acceptable representation for women in video games are women that have very, very small proportions. Far closer to someone looking androgynous than like the average woman out there. I was also given an example of Naughty Dog's women in the past few games. We had the classic ladies of the older games back when Amy Hennig was still working there. And then with Neil Druckmann's takeover, there's been a theme of these women with very masculine presences and even bodies. For example, in Uncharted 4, we have Nadine. In the first Last of Us, there was a lady who led the Fireflies, and then there was also Tess, who looked good, but then, for some reason, in the remake, they went out of their way to make her look like an old hag, and then in The Last of Us 2, we see the shit show unfold, where we're given Abby, a principal character, that uses the body of a man, but has on the head of a woman. It's so ridiculous that in this show they didn't even bother to go looking for a buff actress who maybe also does UFC or whatever, whatever, you know, like Gina Carano or what's the other one? Ronda Rousey. Because it's just pointless. Not even women in the UFC look like Abby. Abby is straight up modeled after a man. And of course, who could forget Naughty Dog's next project, Intergalactic Heretic Prophet, where we'll be playing as yet another woman, caked up with androgynous or straight up male features, attitudes, and to some extent, even body proportions. It's a damn shame to see Naughty Dog turn into this, after having had such respectable female characters such as Chloe and Elena. I would hate to see Bethesda falling down the same rabbit hole of hating and despising femininity. Another thing I've observed in my own time, and that I've mentioned in a previous video last year, if you guys go and join some Baldur's Gate 3 communities among others, you will see no shortage of female players sharing their playable characters, and this is the kind of thing that you often see. Women love aesthetically pleasing characters. Like many other things in life, depending on the setting of the game, the themes, and the overall design, they will have a blast rocking revealing outfits for their custom characters. They don't want to play as something that has been uglified or toned down or altered to look unattractive or featureless. I don't understand why the option of allowing women to create characters like they do in Baldur's Gate 3 is being removed from modern games, while at the same time pretending or excusing themselves that they're doing it for them. And the same thing goes with swapping male characters out for female characters, even when it doesn't make sense. For example, I had a chat with my girlfriend about these types of matters, and she even prefers a male protagonist in certain settings, like for example Ghost of Tsushima. She loved playing as Jin, and she couldn't imagine the setting and the acts in the game working as well from a narrative and immersion standpoint if we were playing as a woman. I know that this can just be hypothetical. People can be like, oh, that's hypothetical, that's one person. But it's not one person, let's get realistic here. She's also a big fan of the Jedi games, just like myself, and she loves Cal Kestis. She's not the only one. There's whole fan groups out there dedicated to this game, and that are filled with women who simp for this character. They even have Gooner mods for him. And of course it's not just the guys, I mean come on, where are we, La La Land? And I can tell you that of course all of these gamers who love playing the Jedi games, be them male or female, they couldn't imagine liking them removing Cal Kestis from his role and replacing him with someone else just for girl representation. These forced replacements or injections or pieces of censorship are never appealing to the majority, and their very concepts are corrupted. This kind of mentality also dulls down the importance of female support characters. The Jedi games have Seer in the first game and Merrin in the second. Sadly, they made Merrin look like a bit of a homeless guy in the second game instead of a cute death witch like in the first, but hey, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that in the third game she will at least not have that shaggy ass haircut on her head. These are vital characters for Cal's development. Seer helps him reconnect with the Force after shutting himself off for so long and having traumatic memories from Order 66, and eventually officially knights him. And Merrin is a very able fighter and magic user. They're both into each other, and it's like a small developing love interest that grounds him and pulls him from the brink of giving into the dark side. But the problem is that this is how a normal person would view this. Unhinged people sadly don't see it that way at all. For them, a side character or a supporting role is just no good for a female character because, you know, the usual bullshit. Patriarchy this, supremacy that, misogyny those, etc, so on and so forth, because they're not gamers, they don't care about the story, they don't care about the context, they only care about one thing. Who's the lead character? That's the one on top. And whoever is the secondary character or the supporting character, no matter how important they are, even if it's like Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings, they are nothing. So honestly, I don't even listen to these people and these arguments anymore. These people are just hypocritical morons. They can't simply be over here calling a supporting role of high importance to be misogynistic while literally acting on or advocating for the erasure of women from media by morphing them into either androgynous or straight up man-looking characters who are forbidden to express any femininity or beauty at all. Forbidden to show any accentuated features of an unapologetically female body, such as thicker thighs and wider hips than what men would usually have, and slimmer waists than also what men would have, and of course breasts, all while of course also taking their very nature and switching the damn name to some inhumane crap designation like body type 1, 2 or A or B, as if we were all some robots or I don't know, Tupperwares or something. The double standard is clear to see in every single instance that a man is allowed to show masculinity and loads of skin, like, muscles and stuff like that. Again, loads of it, through armors that expose their torsos and even statues where their physiques are on full display. And when I say this, I don't mean to entice these morons to censor the men too. I mean to push back on this crap and have them show women the same respect. This is how statues are meant to look like in Oblivion. Cyrodiil's culture is very much akin to our real world's Roman Empire. They are prideful in what they have achieved, in uniting all of the lands and all of the people of Tamriel under one banner. And despite them having disputes where some of these places have ceased to be part of the empire, they still remain a jewel of civilization in the continent. They are rich and they love to show it. They are cultured and they love to show it. They have brave and flashy male champions and beautiful and agile female legates, and they love to show it and revere it. And to have these statues dotting the land with this theme cropping up throughout them, where the men are big, tough, packed with muscle and wearing as little as just loincloths on some of them to accentuate their warrior bodies, but the women look like maids or nuns, it should weak and featureless. It just doesn't work, and it actually changes the context of these statues. It changes the context of the culture. This is a culture that respects both men and women, and with these statues it looks like the men are the ones who are tough and warriors and flashy and respectable, while women are just an afterthought, with their beauty and their features held back, almost as if it was forbidden for them to show it, or to be proud of their beauty when they have literal gods and deities dedicated to beauty. Virtuous is often very glazed for being this based studio that works on so many different games. They aren't really that based if they can't even keep this goddamn concept in mind. I don't know what exactly is going on. I don't know why the gods were left alone to look the way they do. I don't know why the mermaid statue was altered to look even better than the original, but there's still a consistent theme here that fits with this ridiculous ideology. It just wasn't applied all the time, making it look like, I don't know, maybe it's the result of a mix of developers working on this, and some of them are normal designers doing a proper unbiased job just to make these statues look objectively good and as close to the originals as possible, and then others are woked out morons who just can't resist injecting their biases into work that does not belong to them in an industry that does not revolve around their sensitivities or ideals. Maybe it's really just as simple as that. Some good developers and some activists. Or maybe it's something else. Either way, it's ridiculous. Now onto the rest of the video. So yeah, when looking into these issues and looking them up online, there's always been two different narratives surrounding the problem, one of them being the objectification and another being the whole thing where now, for some goddamn reason, the words male and female have become transphobic, as reported by the gaming media giant PC Gamer themselves. We'll get to this ridiculous article on a future video, and it's the same with the concept of showing gender differences. As I said a bit ago, I hated the objectification argument so much I wanted to avoid it, to not even give it any validity whatsoever, but it's literally impossible because these morons can't understand why people complain about female armor variants being removed or feminine features being removed from statues. They default straight into it being about gooning and corn. In Oblivion, arguably one of the games with the ugliest NPCs that have ever existed, a feature that was kept in the remaster is apparently, according to these dumbass tourists, a gooner game. Some going as far as to say that, oh my god, will these gooner gamers just shut up for once and let one game, just one game, come out that isn't objectifying women for gooning purposes? And it's such a delusional take, like, what do you mean let one game come out? This isn't a trend in the AAA industry, it's just a handful of studios mainly from China and Korea, and occasionally, although much rarer these days, from Japan, making female characters that don't look like aged barrels of Porto wine. Everywhere else, we either have tame female character designs that have no measure of objectification at all, or we have studios going out of their way to make them uglier and nerf those aforementioned female features such as narrower waists, wider hips, larger chest, narrower shoulders, etc. This is what the trend is right now. You open up your Steam, PlayStation or Xbox store, browse over to the big budget games location, and 90% of the games you'll find are like this. Games like Stellar Blade, Marvel Rivals and the upcoming Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers are outliers. They stand out of the norm. And when it comes to Oblivion, there was nothing to censor for this purpose. This is why I believe this is much more related to gender erasure than objectification. Elder Scrolls games have never really been, you know, sexy. Dragon Age and Mass Effect had much more of that kind of fame than this series. Then we also have the things that they did with the character stats by introducing these origins. I actually missed this when I first played the game and made that first video. When I saw this, I thought it was just a nice little cool addition as part of the changes to the progression system. Just a nice little addition for role-playing and lore purposes where we have different origins within each race in the game. For example, if you're from Skyrim, maybe you're from the harsher Eastern version, so you had more physical traits, or perhaps you're from the tamer Western version and you have more agility traits. If you're Imperial, maybe you are of Colovian origin, or perhaps you're just a regular one, you know, etc. But actually, nope. What this is, well, there's a couple of layers to it. In the original game, male and female characters started with slightly different stats because of, you know, obvious gender differences. Male characters had a few extra points in strength and endurance, for example, and female characters maybe had some extra agility or charisma or speed, etc. It depended on the race. So what they did here is they eliminated that stat difference from the gender selection. Both body types now have identical base stats, but they apparently moved those stat differences to this new origin selection option. The weird thing is that this is apparently somehow tied to your character's voice, so it's acting as a voice selection screen despite it not telling the players. Honestly, the whole thing is kinda confusing. There's a bunch of people online who don't know what the hell is going on. They're making forums posts wondering why the hell they have their male characters sounding like women and their female characters sounding like men. So what seems to be happening is that if you select the origin that coincides with the female character stats, then your character will sound like a woman, and vice versa. I don't think that this is intentional, and I think that someone will eventually patch this out by maybe attributing the voice of the player character to the body type that they choose. However, to be fully frank with you guys, it may be intentional, honestly, that they displaced the voice on purpose, because the voice was never detached from the male and female thing, which is now called body type 1 and 2. The voice of the player character was always attached to that decision. In order to figure out these situations, you have to think like an activist. And if I think like an activist, aside from this incredible urge to take a shower, what I feel in regards to this is that it is bigoted and transphobic to assume that someone who looks like a body type 1 would automatically have a more feminine voice when they may actually be on testosterone or some other shit, I don't know, which has lowered their voices, you know, something like that. So with that said, yeah, it may very well be intentional and they just maybe slipped up on not having a dedicated voice button, or hell, maybe it's just a weird glitch, I have no idea. What I do know is that if these developers weren't worrying about this 1% issue, players out there wouldn't be having this voice problem ruining their immersion. It's just a totally unnecessary mess born from an activist mindset of having an aversion to gender differences. We just can't have a good old-fashioned system where you pick male and the character sounds like a man, or you pick female and the character sounds like a woman anymore, as it was originally present across all Elder Scrolls games. It's 2025 now, we can't have that, guys. We can't simply go and imply something as potentially offensive to the maladjusted woke crowd as that. We can't imply that on average men are stronger and women are more agile. That would just be too destructive as well. You guys just don't get it, you know? You guys don't understand. Gaming has to be a safe space, okay? In the armor department, there aren't that many armors that had female variants, like it wasn't all of them, but now there's virtually none except for the Saints and Seducers armor from the Shivering Isles. This, once again, I believe leans far more towards the gender erasure aspect than the objectification / gooning excuse. I mean, seriously, who the fuck was gooning to characters that look like this in 2006? This is just utterly disingenuous. Anyone looking to have a good time could just go to a wanking website or get a magazine. Hell, they'd get more action out of watching a weather report on the news than loading up Oblivion. Unless they have a fetish for Down syndrome. Anyway, all that these armor variants and statues ever really did was accentuate the female form. You know, making them look fit for women in cases of armors and making them look like women in cases of statues. Were some of the ideas a little goofy and cliche for its time, like for example breastplates in the shape of breasts as if the entire female population had the same booba size? Sure, maybe. But these are the kinds of small nitpicks that people would ignore because all in all the armor designs looked great as they did. And as a counter argument for that, don't so many male armors even in real life come with the shapes of six-packs and fully defined pecs? Where's the outrage about that? Were ancient warriors in Greece and all that making those armors to goon to each other? Like seriously, these people have their minds in the gutter when they see garbage like this and then they want to project it outwards towards everyone. It's ridiculous. This really is much simpler than all that. If you're playing an RPG like this and you create a male character, you want the guy to look like a guy. A cool thing about Skyrim, for example, is you could choose different weights too. So if you wanted to create a more light thief character or maybe a wizard, you could scale down the character's body. And if you wanted a big jacked warrior, you could do that too. And if you select a female character, then you want her to look like a girl. Oblivion used to do that with those armor designs that accentuated a character's body shape, giving women the ability to create these female characters that donned some armors that looked badass while still retaining their inherent features, or in other cases that looked more feminine, and in a total respectful way, by the way. Like this wasn't even one of those bikini armor situations where the fan service is obvious. These were just armors accentuated to the female body, or with more female appealing cuts. It's also present in Skyrim's armor and clothes. For example, the college mage robes for men accentuate their broader shoulders and the hoods are normal, let's say, for lack of a proper word, but on women the robes accentuate their smaller upper bodies and slightly wider hips, and their hoods have some fur stitched around the edges. With the fur armor, for example, there's 2 or 3 general variants, one with a vest, one without, and then one without a vest but it has a cloak on the back. On women, the one without a vest has a bit of a fur top covering their breasts, and the one with a vest leaves a bit of an opening for a small, tasteful display of cleavage. Again, this isn't gooning content, this is just accentuating and highlighting feminine features. Just like on the male counterpart, we have the guy with a six-pack and a chest and shoulders that honestly look ripped. This is what people like in their RPGs. Again, go nuts with a weight slider, allowing player to make these features less pronounced. Like, of course, if I want to roleplay as Gandalf, I'm not going to go with a buff, muscular body, and if I want to roleplay as an invisible thief and assassin, kind of like Arya from Game of Thrones, then I'm not going to give her massive bust either. But the option to have those sliders there and to have these features unashamedly on display should be there. It adds to actual diversity in the gameplay. The removal, alteration, or straight up censorship of these features from the Oblivion Remaster make me very concerned with what is to come in the Elder Scrolls 6. It makes me worry that these pesky, annoying little ideological influences will stretch beyond just the character creation, armor designs, and odd statues, and get over to infecting much bigger problems such as writing, lore, storytelling, and presentation, to the point where the game won't even be enjoyable due to a constant disconnection from immersion. It's already bad enough where in Oblivion you might look at your character in third person, and if you're playing as a female character, you can't even tell the difference from what you're wearing, unless you're wearing regular clothes. And it sucks that this kind of garbage is something that people just have to accept and get on with. It sucks that it's one of those things where it's perceived poorly to even be seen complaining about it online, even if you're a woman doing it, because it's always twisted down this objectification road with the dismissive gooner comments, and even if we strip that away, it's still viewed negatively to criticize it, because it always goes down this road of, are you seriously complaining about this? Like, can't you just, oh my god, enjoy the game? Some people have seriously gone and got themselves brainwashed by this shit to the point where they just get mad if someone else is pointing out a flaw with the game that is born of this issue. If you say that you have FPS drops, nobody bats an eye. If you say that it's ridiculous to censor outfits, statues, and language in the game, then they get triggered. I think most of these changes that we see in this game conform to what we can read on this handy list of creative restrictions that Microsoft employs on their projects over at Xbox Game Studios, which obviously Bethesda is now part of. They proudly shared this themselves about a year ago during the Stellar Blade drama online, where gamers were happily celebrating a female character that was designed to look unapologetically feminine and attractive, while in the meantime game journalists were calling them and the developers behind the game incels who have have never seen a woman in real life. IGN themselves said this. IGN, fellas, one of the biggest and most prominent outlets in the industry. But then we, the gamers, are the toxic and unreasonable ones, aren't we? It's always our fault, isn't it? Surely there hasn't been anything at all gaslighting us, insulting us, and pushing ideological garbage onto us, isn't that right, fellas? It's all in our heads. Big outlets like PC Gamer and IGN are totally unbiased. Nobody's running any agenda at all. Nobody's insulting anyone or is demeaning anything. No, it's just us. We're crazy. Anyway, this prompted Microsoft to have this moment for themselves where they were like, you know what? I'm going to totally look like the good guy if I show everyone this disgusting list of oppressive creative restrictions that I impose on all of our studios under the guise of progressivism. All the non-gamer activists out there who never buy games are going to be so happy to see it. So they shared this. The entire thing is caked with terrible roadblocks for game development, but I want to divert your attention to this corner right here.
Are you reinforcing any negative gender stereotypes? Are you unnecessarily introducing gender and gender barriers into your code or design?
Oh god, what the f***? Introducing gender is now an unnecessary negative thing? Like, fellas, do you see what I mean? When I said earlier that words like male and female have become offensive or phobic in some way, I wasn't kidding or exaggerating. I was that serious. This is legitimately how these people function, and it's not just crazy schizos on the internet, like, oh, stop, this is a conspiracy, this isn't how real people think, this isn't the real thing, it's just one random TikTok. Like, no, this is pretty consistent. This is an active measure employed by Microsoft. This kind of trash has been normalized to such an extent in society that a mega corporation literally makes use of it because in their mind it's the profitable and approvable thing to do. And of course, don't forget that when the mod first landed on Nexus, it was banned. And now that it was allowed to exist, we have journalists bashing Nexus for making that decision. I don't mean to go off on a tangent over this, but this happens so often whenever I'm having discussions with people, or sometimes even in my comments, where people come in and say, what you're saying is not true, it's not representative of what we all think, it's not representative of what's going on, it's just a few crazy people. It's not. These things exist, these things are being employed by companies. It's ideologies that are pre-approved. It's ideologies that people need to contend with. If they don't, they get labeled as this or that, and content has to be tailored to these specifications. I would entertain the idea that most people who vote left, who are lefties, don't genuinely believe or agree with all of this lunatic stuff. I would agree with that. To some extent, I would agree with that. I would accept that. But if you don't call it out, if you don't make a stand against it, then this is going to be attributed to you. This is going to be what you are known for, and the lunacy of it all is going to fall on you. You either keep your side's extremism in check, or you will be defined by it. And when we have situations where corporations, entertainment, education, etc. are doing these things, then it's gotten to the point where it has seeped to the culture itself.
Are your female characters equipped with clothing and armor that fits their tasks?
This one is just a fancy way of wording things to be able to censor whatever outfits they want and not be questioned for it, because arguably, if a male character is able to fight bare-chested, why wouldn't a female character be able to do it as well? Especially in the Elder Scrolls universe, where magic and all sorts of other equalizers exist to justify the existence of very skillful and successful female warriors. And of course, this is also totally dismissive of this one thing that should exist in gaming, this pesky little thing that so many of these studios lost as they dedicated themselves to hiring activists instead of actual game developers, this thing called creativity, style and flair, the same kind of thing from which characters like Dante, Bayonetta and more recently Eve from Stellar Blade were born, where these characters are obviously not dressed for the task that they are undertaking, but they work anyway because the setting and the general direction of the game allows for it. But of course, the retards who came up with this list obviously don't know what the fuck that is, so here we go. If a woman is fighting anything at all, better cover her up from head to toe in heavy bulky armor. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Do they have exaggerated body proportions?
This one literally just means, do they look like women? If they do, you've gone too far and you need to scale that shit back. Women don't exist anymore, only body types do. Get with the times, fellas. Your mothers didn't bring you into this world, a birthing person did. Nope, stop complaining, stop being a bigot, it is what it is, get with the program, fellas. And then we just have some other unrelated garbage that is just as bad, but that will leave for situations where they're relevant. The censorship on the statues also fit this mold. Any statue that had what they called exaggerated body proportions, such as the bit contouring a Daedra's breasts, for example like on Azora, even if the breasts are like normal average size without being anything above and beyond, then they had to be covered up with a goddamn towel, or in the case of Namira, they gave her a t-shirt to wear underneath, because, you know, she might be cold. Maybe someday this remaster will get a Super Wombo Combo remake and we'll even be able to see this shirt with more detail. Maybe it's like an Xbox merch t-shirt with the Avowed logo on it. Here Namira, Lady of Ancient Darkness, please cover up your disgusting quarter booba window with this fine piece of merch from your new corporate overlords. I swear, man, this is all so fake and ridiculous that you have to laugh in order to not lose your mind with it, you know? When I was growing up, the feminist progressive narrative was that women were allowed to wear whatever the hell they wanted to, and men were the ones who needed to be educated and parented properly to control themselves at the sight of a woman wearing a skirt, for example, or wearing a top with a bit of cleavage or whatever. Like, basically, just teach the boys to be more respectful and to stop being creeps or whatever, and to learn how to behave themselves if a woman is dressing a certain way, unless of course it's exaggerative. At least that was the narrative when I was growing up. And it wasn't all bad because, you know, for example, it allowed for women to not be objectified just because they were wearing a skirt or a low-cut dress. And it also had good things for the boys because if you control yourself and you don't look like a creepy, drooling idiot in front of women, then you would have a far better shot with them. I don't remember any nasty indicators of narcissism or other crap like we see nowadays, or this total hatred against boys. I don't remember any of that. Back then, things just felt a lot more normal. You know, just be normal, just be a human. Dress however you want to dress, be confident, be sure of yourself, be mature, don't be an idiot, and this goes obviously for both men and women, and just live your life. But now the feminist and progressive narrative is instead to just cover everything up. Cover all the women up. The men? No. Those can have their bodies exposed, it's all good. We can still have statues of buff men in games, we can still have clothing pieces where you just wear the pants and are totally shirtless. You can enhance your masculinity, put it on display. We can still do all of that. But the women? Nah, cover them up. Fully. Eliminate any shred of skin that is visible below the shoulders because it's inappropriate. If making a video game or whatever, make sure they have nothing bigger than an A cup. Do not give them any curves to their bodies. Keep the curves as low-key as possible, and the ass, flatten that shit up like a pancake. Whenever possible, make them bald too.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No. Look at the top of his head. Look at his lips.
I just don't get where the female empowerment is at all. I don't see where's the freedom to be who they want to be, to dress how they want to dress and act the way that they want to act. I don't see the attempt to try and elevate the appreciation for the female form or elevate the value of the virtues of beauty, for example, etc., so on, so forth. All I see in the modern day feminism and progressive movement is the push for bashing men and bring them down in whatever ways possible rather than elevating themselves. It's gotten to the ridiculous point where if you as a man like women, like if you look at a woman and you go, oh man, yeah, this is what I like, that they will go out of their way to make themselves unappealing just to spite you. They'll go out of their way to take the very concept of beauty and demonize it, saying that it's presenting harmful and unrealistic body and beauty standards for all of the women out there, pretending as if all women out there look like shit. And if you look good or happen to have proportions that are bigger than their androgynous meta, then you are just a shameful whole part of the problem. It's so ridiculously ironic even, isn't it? Something that was meant to focus wholly on women, supporting and empowering and elevating them, is instead wholly focused on men, humiliating them, shaming them, and trying to take away every bit of enjoyment from entertainment that used to be catered to them. They're basically oppressing women into a position where they have to be ashamed of their bodies, where their bodies are, according to them by the way, this is not me saying it, fit for nothing more than just to be objectified by men. So they must cover themselves up, and in media they must have their inherent natural female features toned down and made either more masculine or at the very least androgynous, because in their mind anything other than that will be enjoyed by us filthy, disgusting orcs, even if it's just a stupid-ass video game remaster from 2006. And if you as a woman speak out against this, if you see this and you go, no, screw this, I'm not going to be ashamed of how I look, I'm not going to be covering myself from head to toe, if you dare to stand up and speak out against any of this at all, your minority card is immediately removed, and you are now part of the problem as well. A sexist, or a TERF, or a fatphobe, or all three. Isn't that wonderfully progressive? Anyway, I think we do need to draw lines against these blatant examples of bullshit even if we have a good game underneath. We have to show these companies that this isn't something that we're gonna support if they escalate it. Oblivion Remaster is still a great game because Oblivion itself was a great game, with a lot of really good content. The only damage that can be done to it through this activist nonsense is limited. So you can still find yourself immersed for a long time before something like this crosses your screen after the body type selection in the menu, unless of course you suffer from that issue where your male character sounds like a woman or vice versa. It's very applicable to cases like Baldur's Gate 3. It's a game that is often brought up by some people in defense of wokeism in games, how it has all the bad things that Veilguard has, for example, even though that's not true at all, not even in the slightest. Though I should also be clear and fair that it is also called woke by some anti-woke people as well, which in this case isn't in defense of wokeism, it's just an attack on the game in general. But I don't see it this way, even though I am someone who many would consider anti-woke. And I am against this kind of stuff. I am against, ideological influences in my games. It's just that the intention and the execution matter. Are there things in Baldur's Gate 3 that could be considered a woke element? Oh, absolutely, 100%, especially after the patch. But the intention behind their use and the way it's employed is extremely important to label something as quote-unquote woke or not in the way that it is usually taken as a word, which is like, this game is woke, I don't recommend it, it's filled with this stuff, it's basically unplayable, it's immersion breaking, etc. And an important factor about that in Baldur's Gate 3 is that, for example, the genderless stuff was only added after launch via a patch that allowed for players to choose a few different words in the starting menu, basically. A third option for non-binary, plus letting players pick what they would like to be referred to as. It was very much an afterthought added in via patch rather than an ideological theme, for lack of a better term, as it was in Veilguard, where the developers were taking this kind of nonsense so seriously that, well, Tash happened. A character inserted to whinge about this stuff, and in modern terms as well, like they didn't even bother to come up with a fantasy term to kind of integrate it, like they tried to do with Graham in Inquisition, who was sort of a trans character but never really used that word. Technically he was a woman who wanted to be a man and live hers, whatever, life in that way, so he wore male armors, had a male haircut, etc. You can ask him in a side dialogue why he doesn't need try blood magic or some other shit to basically force a gender switch, and he doesn't do it because of how dangerous that kind of magic is. That's about it. I know that alone is already too much for some people, it's already too obvious, it's obvious what they're pointing to, it's unnecessary, and if it's during a time like right now where there's a lot of this contentious stuff on TV, it can make it totally immersion breaking. And I think that that's a totally perfectly reasonable take from people, like it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's obvious what this is. It's done way better than what they did with Tosh, especially when it was done back then in 2014 when these issues weren't as contentious and as contemporary as they are now. But yeah, it's still one of those things that is obviously there for one reason only. Either way, the existence of a character like Krem should not imply a slippery slope sort of thing, where now the natural progression for the series would be to absolutely destroy it with identity politics garbage characters like Tosh. It shouldn't imply this, but sadly that's precisely what happened because of this mind virus cult thought bullshit that sees gaming and these big franchises within as these little territories to conquer by pushing these elements through. I'd still like to believe, however, that it doesn't have to be that way, and more games like Baldur's Gate 3 can happen instead of more games like Veilguard, where they just push things to be as blatantly obvious as possible, even with things that went beyond Tosh, like for example, this same soft and politically correct theme present in the factions, like the treasure hunters not being able to be treasure hunters because that would imply that they're taking things from someone else's culture, and that's not cool. The thieves not being thieves and instead only ever fulfilling contracts to help those in need and screw over the rich. How do the poor manage to pay for these services, for these contracts? I have no idea. You'd have to ask the writers, but they all kinda got shit canned from the studio, so good luck with that. You have to try Burger King or McDonald's or something. Actually, since the industry is completely boned and, these people fail upwards, you can actually find them working at top studios like Wizards of the Coast, EA, or even Sony. The same was present in the Assassin faction, by the way, only ever fulfilling good contracts. Of course, you also couldn't use blood magic because blood magic is questionable, etc., so on and so forth. You can check out my Veilguard videos if you're interested in a deeper analysis. There was just no space for evil or for anything morally gray or morally dark in this game at all. It's this obvious softness and political correctness. It's blatant and it literally puts itself ahead of anything else. It doesn't care about the plot or the characters or the player immersion. All of that is secondary to the message and the way that the developers feel, even if they're working on a dark fantasy RPG. This is why Veilguard flopped and Baldur's Gate 3 didn't. This is just not at all what we see with Baldur's Gate 3 at any capacity. I don't want to bang on this topic too much, so I'll just give one more example. We can cover this topic more extensively someday in a future separate video if you guys want. So as a solid example I can give without wasting too much time in this, Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't force you to do anything. It doesn't force anything at all onto you, nor does it force your interactions with it. In Veilguard, whenever interacting with Tash, you have to reassure her. Same with other characters, by the way. Like, I remember wanting to tell Balara to fuck off, and I just couldn't. The worst I could do to her is kind of just cut to the chase whenever she spoke, kind of like try to cut her yapping and just get directly to the point. In Baldur's Gate 3, not only can you avoid these characters entirely and not even, have them on your party, but if you really want to, you can even kill them. This is something that you would never see in a woked out game trying to force its views or whatever onto you as the player. In a lot of ways, Baldur's Gate 3 is all about freedom, and in cases of true freedom, an option is just an option. Attractive female characters still exist, for example, but in Veilguard, good luck. There isn't a single one. You can't even create your own. And being able to kill a character like Tash? Oh buddy, good luck. The fucking moon will fall to earth before that happens. So I think it's important to be able to differentiate this stuff and to be fair and objective when doing so. Not everything is the same, not every execution or intention comes from the same place or is applied to the same degree. But it's also important to be objective about the fact of what happens when this kind of thing that was put into Oblivion Remaster is given room to grow and spread like a parasite. Especially when studios go into making new games with this mentality in mind. That's when the big problems crop up. And sometimes you don't even know the true extent of those problems until you see them in action, because there's a lot of stuff around us in various games, especially from before, that are totally normal, and we see them as totally normal because we are not sick in the head. But there's people out there who would spaz out over them and find something about them that can be misconstrued as offensive or as a negative stereotype or as a microaggression, etc. The list goes on, and it's updated every few weeks with some other new shit that is supposedly offensive or crossing a line. Like, didn't we actually just see a headline a few days ago from the date of this video about teabagging in a video game now being a bannable offense? Like, this shit is getting ridiculous. That's how we got body type to begin with. It's born out of this ridiculous assertion that the gender binary is not only wrong, because apparently there's like hundreds of them, but also offensive and dismissive of those who do not fit in. So basically we're talking about like 1% of the population being the ones catered to by this bullshit, while the 99% just has to put up with it. I will genuinely never understand this. I never will, really. Even from the perspective of a non-binary person, like if I was one of these people and I had one of these goofy genders that they have listed, like omnigender for example, which is literally an amalgamation of every single one that exists, don't ask me how that works, I have no fucking idea, I would still not want this done in video games. I would still, at the very least, advocate for studios to please put in male, female, and then body type A and B. At the end of the day, who cares? There's basically no workload at all. It would just be duplicating the male and female presets, but with a different name. And I would do this because if I was a non-binary person, I would not want to be directly antagonizing and radicalizing people against me because of a damn video game. I would want to just be left alone to live my life and not intrude on that of others. If for nothing else, then just for this self-serving, narcissistic mentality that I don't want to be targeted by them and to have people rising up fighting against this censorship. But sadly, we just don't see this happening. We never really see this angry-ass movement take 2 seconds to just stop and think for once about what is best for the people that they claim to be advocating for. Just to ask themselves once, like, man, wouldn't it be better to find a peaceful and reasonable middle ground solution to coexist with as many of the others as we can instead of pushing for the fucking impossible while making enemies of everyone who doesn't conform? But nah, sadly there's just way too nuanced and mature for an extremist, and that's why they lose, because in the end, when these companies realize that pushing for this stuff is not only unprofitable but straight up unsustainable, they're going to have no choice but to drop this. And then they'll leave people behind, like that Eddie person who was beefing with that other creator like Nure during the whole Veilguard saga, looking all sad and depressed on camera saying, "Oh guys, I don't think BioWare has me in their best interests anymore," after they got rid of Veilguard's director and writers. Like, seriously? You're not sure if the corporation isn't putting you, your gender identity, and your personal problems above its own bottom line?
What are you, fucking stupid?
And so when stuff like this happens, and it happens to happen in a good game, we should always point it out and speak out. Don't get shamed by these losers trying to make you look like the crazy unreasonable person when they are the ones literally trying to push the concept of the words male and female now being offensive and phobic. Male and female, one of the most inoffensive, natural, and simple concepts for people to understand, a thing that we learn to distinguish in the earliest years of our lives, literally instinctually. This is offensive? This is phobic? This needs to be removed? Fellas, this is what is ridiculous, so don't let these morons flip that on you. And also, don't end up in that field where you get stuck defending every aspect of a game that you like, to the point where you look at these issues and you go, I just don't care, this doesn't matter to me. It does matter. It matters big time. You just simply don't have to boycott it to criticize it. If you don't like games like Veilguard and you don't want more of them popping up, especially as remakes, reboots, or sequels to long-time running beloved franchises keep being made, then don't say that it doesn't matter, because that attitude will actually be taken as support for more of these kinds of changes and themes to be introduced into more games, leading to more Veilguards and less Oblivions or Expedition 33s or Witcher 3s in the RPG space and in gaming in general. Make yourselves heard even if you like the game, because you can totally do both. Like, come on, I mean, we do this with games all the time. How many times have you guys enjoyed a game regardless of it having a bad story or bad side quests or maybe being unstable and crashing, etc. We do this for other issues. There's no reason why we can't do it for these issues as well. Be loud and clear that you don't want this garbage in your games. Like, this doesn't benefit anyone. Even if you are someone who didn't notice these statues, like if you never played the original and you're playing it now for the first time and you didn't even know about the original statues, this design mentality is still objectively worse. If they were done the way that they were originally, it would make the game better in all aspects, not worse. Be loud and clear that if these activists keep pushing this shit further, again going directly against their fan bases, their audiences, and even basic common sense in general, then you will not be supporting them, because in the end this is just the truth. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be playing the remaster of a 2006 game, you'd be on your third playthrough of Dragon Age Veilguard while waiting for the expansion event that never happened because the game died. I really hope that this is not going to be the case with Elder Scrolls 6, but the direction that Xbox Game Studios has been going and the things that they went out of their way to alter and censor in Oblivion's remaster definitely have me worried. The selling point of this game hasn't been the 2025 current day ism of the damn censorship and gender erasure. It was instead the 2006 part of a well-crafted RPG that offers you the escapism and adventure that recent RPGs have struggled to do so, in big part thanks to that current day bullshit, and in other parts thanks to an industry-wide decline in quality, passion and resonance with their communities. But anyway, that's it from me on this one. This was way too long and I rambled a bit, I'm sorry about that, but thank you very much for watching either way, guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, dislike it if you didn't, and subscribe to the channel for future videos on gaming topics. Let me know your thoughts below on the aforementioned video suggestions, and yeah, that's about it for now. I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.